Hi guys, welcome back to another video. If you don't already know who I am, I'm Helen from Crafty So and So, and I like to make crafty things on this channel. So I like sewing, crafts and DIY. I mostly enjoy sewing. I like to document what I'm making, what projects I've got ongoing, and helpful tips for beginners and people who are looking to get into sewing. So before we get started, I'm going to ask if you could like this video and share it with those who also enjoy sewing, just so then everybody else can enjoy these videos, and it really helps me out in the long run. So today I'm going to be showing you how to make an armchair caddy. So if you're not quite sure what an armchair caddy is, I have an example here. An armchair caddy is something that sits over your armchair, and it holds everything that you might need if you are doing hand sewing. So I have a friend who really likes embroidery, so I'm going to make her one, and it's got little pockets on each side, you know, like a pocket for scissors and things like that. So it sits over the arm like so. I'll put a picture up for you now to see it in action. And yes, it's got little pockets on each side, so things will sit in the pockets, you know, your fabric, your scissors and things like that. I've also created a detachable pin cushion, and it's just really handy if you love sitting, watching TV and doing a bit of hand sewing at the same time. And the best part is you can fold it up, roll it over, and you've got a tie, you can wrap around and tie, and it can come with you. So let's get started. So before we get started, I thought I would run through some of the things you are going to need to be able to complete this project. First is some interfacing. I've gone for a medium weight. You can go for stronger depending how tough and how kind of like rigid you want it to be, but medium has been fine for me, so that's what I'm using this time. I've got my sewing clips, though you can use pins. These are just the clover ones, which I really like because they come in this nice little box. So I just use these instead of pins. Pair of scissors, my rotary cutter, and of course my fabrics. I've chosen 6 different fabrics. These were a fat quarter set from Aldi, so the colours are already really nice together, so I just decided to keep them together and use them as they are. You can use different fabrics from different packs if you want. Use anything that you want to put together you think will be nice. It's just that I liked these colours together as they were, so that was what, you know, I wanted to keep them together. I've got 6 just so that I can make the pockets a little bit different and kind of like have a bit of like colour and texture in each different part of the armchair caddy. So you can use all the same fabric, it's completely up to you. Another vital piece of equipment is going to be our cutting mat. This is obviously a bit big for you to even see on screen. You can use smaller, but I'm going to use the larger one just so that I've got enough area to work with while I'm cutting the pieces. And of course you're going to want an iron and an ironing board. You can use your regular iron or you can use a mini sewing iron. I've got one of these mini ones that I really love using because I can keep it on my workspace while I work, just to do those quick seams and quick presses. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that all our fabric is pressed and got no more wrinkles or folds in it, so I'm going to do that right now. So while I'm ironing my fabric, I'm using this like wool felted mat that's underneath. It's probably just under an inch thick, probably about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch thick. And this is really good because it reflects the heat, so it comes back onto the fabric and it makes it a lot more smoother, quicker, so you get the wrinkles out much quicker. And it's great for if you love doing patchwork and quilting because it makes it nice and stiff and even, which I really like. So we're going to start off with our main fabric, which this is going to be the back and the front. So it's going to be, if I show you an example. So this is one I made another time. This is going to be this one. So this is the backing, and then I'm going to use the same for this backing as well. So it's going to be the main big piece of fabric, the biggest pieces for this one, and they're going to be the same size. this wants to be 18 inches by 11 inches, so I'm going to cut it, lay it in half so I can cut 2 in one go. My edges aren't straight, so I'm just going to cut those so they're nice and even. Use my rotary cutter and along that line, and that cuts that away. So it's a nice smooth edge, and I'm just going to do the same for this edge here because that's not completely straight either. So to line it up, so you can see that I'm lining up the lines on my ruler with the edge of the fold of the fabric, and I'm also using the lines on my board just so I can get a nice accurate cut and a nice smooth edge like so. So what I'm going to do first is measure up. As you can see, I've got the increments on my board, so I'm going to measure up to 18. No, we're just going to do. So we're going to change this to 17 by 10. So I'm going to go to 17, line that up on that edge, and then I'm going to mark it with a pen or a pencil or a. So I've got my chalk pencil, and I'm going to mark along here. As you can see, creating a blue line at 17 inches down from the very top edge over here. And then again, we can rule over our ruler to that edge, line it up and cut like so. So then we've got 17 from this point to this point, 17 inches, and then now we're going to be doing 10 from this corner to this corner. So again, I want to take my ruler and line it up, and if I do it this way, 10. So I've got 10 here, and you can see the gap here. So then I'll just mark along again with my chalk pen along that edge, following along, keeping it at 10 inches. You can do this with a tape measure, you don't have to use a ruler. It's just that I find it easier because at least I keep in a straight line, and I don't go off a little bit wibbly, which is something I've done before. So as you can see, I've got a nice, I don't know if you'll be able to see, but I've got the blue line going up the edge. So I'm going to use that, cut up, following that line, line that edge like so. Nice smooth cut. There we go. So then you should have one large piece, which we're going to be cutting in half. Right down the middle there, you can already see the fold. So I'm just going to continue with that fold to create two separate pieces. Separate pieces. So this is going to be the back and so this is going to then be this piece and then this piece. So before we cut anything else, we want to make sure that we've got one piece of this cut into our interfacing. I'm just going to lay that on and cut around it. Really quick and simple. And the interfacing will just give the Armchair Caddy a bit of body and a bit of weight so it doesn't flop around. It's sturdy enough to hold everything you want it to hold, but it doesn't just flop off the side of your armchair. So the next step is to iron down the shiny side, so this is my shiny side, down to the back of your, so none of this has to be turned through, so you don't have to create any neat edge, because it's going to be binded on the edges, so you can put your shiny side of your interfacing onto the wrong side of your fabric, and then that will create a layer like so. So this piece, the non-shiny side and this piece won't really stick. But that doesn't matter because once you start layering everything on, it will be held in place with clips, so you don't have to do too much. Sometimes they can take a little bit more heat, so you might have to put the heat up a little. Just really try and smooth it on, put quite a bit of weight on while you do it, just to get it to really bond together. So the last thing you want is for it all to kind of start peeling away from each other while you're trying to sew. I've had that done to me before. So as you can tell, that's really nice and rigid now. So if I bring my example back over, the next pocket I'm going to be doing is this big one and then this smaller one here. So I'm going to do those in the same fabric just like I've done on here. So I'm going to be cutting this main big one, which is 10 inches, which is this, and then 6.5, which is this measurement here. And so as for the smallest pocket, that is going to be 10 again, that way, and then 3 up. So once I lay this out, we've got a nice corner to work with from there. I'm going to do the big pocket, which is 10 inches by 6.5. So again, I'm going to introduce my ruler, line it up with this bottom hem, this raw edge here, and mark along 10 inches. So just with my, so luckily for me, I have 6 inches going across, so I only have to do another 0.5. So I'm just going to shimmy it over a little and mark, and then I can be doing the 6.5, those 6.5, and I'll mark that going this way. So I'll move that up in increments, making sure my ruler stays on this edge here and it's nice and smooth, and that gives you a nice even pocket, so you've not got one squiggly edge going somewhere. So I'll line my ruler up against there, against that blue line, and I'll simply cut with my ruler, and the same on this side. So that is your large pocket. So you want to be cutting 2 of those, so then it's lined. You don't have to, but I like to just because it feels nicer. Or you can just use this and the interfacing with the binding on the front. So we've got a large pocket there. Put that to one side, and then you want to do the same but for the small pocket. So that one is 10 by 3. So we'll use this because we already know that this is 10, and we just want to measure. If I do it this way, I can show you a bit better. So I can line up 3 to that edge, across, and the same again, across, and I can do the same and then do 2 cuts in one go, which makes it a lot easier because we're going to need 2 pieces. So continue that across. So we've got 2 of us large pockets and 2 smaller pockets. So you want to cut those into interfacing again, just to make sure that they're nice and strong for your armchair caddy. So as you can see, I've got my interfacing for the large and the interfacing for the small pocket. So we're just going to do like we did for the main piece and iron those in place, ready for when we need to use them. So remember, you're putting the interfacing shiny side to the wrong side of your fabric. Because again, your pocket is going to be again, your pocket is going to have a binding on the top, which looks nice, decorative, and it also makes it easier for you not having to turn through any of your pieces. So there we have our pieces for. So now you can see I've got the large pocket with the interfacing and the lining piece, and the same again for the smallest pocket and lining piece there. I'm going to put those to one side and cut our last pocket, which is the second to large. So if I show you mine, so this is the second to large pocket, which sits under, as you can see, it goes all the way to this point, so it's quite a nice deep pocket still. It just means that you can stash a few things in here and smaller things in there, which I really like because it means you've got a bit more usable space and storage. So this pocket here, this one is again 10 inches across and 5.5 deep. So we'll cut that now. We'll cut it this way. So that's 10. So I'm measuring the 10 from the bottom here up to the side, and I'm going to mark it with my tool again. And then I can simply shimmy this down. Because I've got 6 on my ruler, 6 inches, I just need to move it so I'm at the 5.5 on this side. So you can see that my ruler slightly come off this side. I'm all lined up, and I'm just going to run a line that way. And while that's in place, I can even cut it with my rotary cutter. So that's one side cut, as you can see. So we're just going to do the same, lay it on top, and do the same with the ruler up the side. And then across. So then again, you'll have your 2 pieces like so, and then we want one of these in interfacing again to match the rest. So as you can see, I've got my interfacing piece there, and bring in my mat, give that another press just to make sure all the wrinkles and folds are out, and then I want to do the shiny side down and iron that into place. So for each of the top of the pockets, we're going to be using this plain trim. So that's going to sit along the top for each one. So it's going to sit like this along the top, and it'll look really nice. I'll show you the example. So within this one, I just used a plain yellow just to trim the tops. You can use the same as this one, but I quite like using something different, so I'm going to go ahead and create the trim for each of these. So you need 3 lengths of 10 and probably about 2 inches thick, and I'll show you how to attach those. I've laid on my ruler, so it's 2 inches thick here, and then it's over the 10. It's over the 10, but that doesn't matter because I'll use it anyway. Where's that way? That's more. No, that's not enough. So if I go this way, I'll have a bit left over on the edge, but that shouldn't matter too much. You should never cross your arms when you do this. I'll just point that out. But I'm terrible. Don't take too many hints from me. These don't have to go on a curve, they don't have to be bias binding, they can just be flat, straight edges. So we'll do the same again to create a second piece, and then again for a third piece. So to do the bindings for the top, I'm going to simply fold it in half and iron it that way, so you've got a nice smooth edge on one side and both the raw edges on the other side. Do that for all the pieces. That's one. And you don't even have to neaten these off on the edge, because then eventually the whole thing gets bound with bias binding, and that'll neaten off and hide any of the raw edges from the pockets. and the fabric pieces. Right, so you want to make sure that you're, just move those out of the way. So you want to lay your firm piece that's got the interfacing on down with the the backing piece, like the lining piece. So you've got the right sides on the way out. You want to simply take your binding piece and run it along the edge like so. You can cut the edge off because you're not going to need too much overlap, like so, and I'm just going to pin that in place now. So when you so you'll sew this together, I'll show you, but you'll sew with a 1/4 inch seam along here, and that means that you'll be able to fold that over and sew it in place again. So I'll just pin this in place like so. So then you'll sew this with a 1/4 inch seam, and then I'll show you the next step. So do that for each of the pockets. So let's just trim off any odd ends. So now you can see that you've got it sewn in place. This will still be flapping around, but that won't be there for long. So then you want to pull that over. You want to push it with your fingers, iron this, and then pull it to the other side. And because you've already got the neat edge on this side, you can just either slip stitch it in place or top stitch it. I prefer to top stitch just because it's quicker and a bit easier. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. Introduce your mat. So bring the iron back over. You want to be pushing that edge up and pulling it over, and you should, if you've done it properly, you should be able to pull that over and it just overlap the previous stitch line. So then that should sit nicely. Iron it down so it's kind of nicely already in place, and then you can clip it just to hold it or pin it, whichever one works for you, ready to top stitch in place. So I'll show you that up close. As you can see, folded it over, and that's ready to top stitch, and then that's the other side. Do that for your other two pockets, and then I'll show you the next step. So now you've got all your pockets ready to go, a binding sewn on the top, nice and neat, top stitched in place. You can bring in your base pieces. So laying your pieces together like you did for the pockets, with the interfacing sandwiched in the middle, and you can start building up the pieces, so the layers. So if I show you my example, so you can see we've got the large, so as you can see we've got the large pocket on this side, and then we've got these two smaller ones on this side. I'm going to do the exact same thing again on this one. So we'll have these two like so, laid up on this side. I'm going to have that way actually, and then the large one this way. So your binding wants to be pointing inwards and not on the edge, because the edge is going to be binded again. This is the top of your pockets, so they want to be out and seen like so. So pin or clip those in place, because then we'll do a rough sew of a 1/4 inch seam around the edge just to hold these layers in place while we do the binding. So once you've got it pinned in place, take it to the sewing machine and sew with a 1/4 inch seam around the edge. Make sure you catch all the layers. It might be a bit tough, so if you've got a delicate sewing machine, you might want to just kind of tack it in place by hand and then do the binding. So as you can see, I've got it all sewn together. Now you want to mark out where your pockets are going to go. So if I bring over my example, you can see that my big pocket has a seam down here. So then you've got 2 separate pockets. This one is loose, and then I have 2 there. For this one, I wanted to do a bit different. So I'm going to have a seam going down here, so it's like where your scissors would sit. So I'm going to have one going down here. I'm going to mark that just with a pencil, with a small mark, just to give me a nice little line to work from, ever so gently, nothing too drastic. There we go. And then I'm going to simply just put the other 2 in half. So I'm going to move to about there and do the same down the centre or so for the other 2. So I've created 2 lines, one here for like a scissors pouch and the other 2 for 2 smaller pouches to use. So sew them and we'll move on to the next step. So once you've sewn those in place, I'll just cut these threads and I'll be able to show you properly how mine looks. You might be able to see better on the reverse side. I can work out where the camera is. So as you can see there, I've got that line, the stitch line, the same on the other side and at the front here as well. And there. So they're my pockets. So they'll have things that, you know, like scissors can sit in there nicely. You know, the little scissors can sit in this one. And, you know, all these little things which I think are really helpful. So it start to look like something like this, where you've got room for all your little bits and pieces. And this also gives it enough space to be able to fold and fold away. So the next thing we need to be doing is making our binding. So if you've not made binding before, I will leave a tutorial below so you can follow that a bit more intricately, but I'm just going to use some that I've already made. So once you've got your binding strip, you can use normal bias binding if you want, but I'm going to show you how to do binding this way, which is very similar to the way that I've just did on the pockets, where you fold the binding in half, iron along, and then you use that as your binding. So I'm going to iron all mine and then I'm going to show you how to put it on and then sew it. So when you're coming to lay on your binding, I am going to, you want an open edge like so, if you can see it, because then you're going to slip the other edge in so you've got a nice clean edge, so you don't have any raw edges on show. And I'll show you how to. So you want to turn it in and then fold it back over so you've got a nice clean edge. So you want to start, I like starting in the middle just because I find it easier to work on. Start and pin it in place like so. I've left this open, so this, where the clip is, I've left a gap so then I can slip the very end of the bias in there to create a nice neat edging. And then it's kind of, it looks more like a continuous seam. So when you come to a corner, you want to fold back in a diagonal. I'll show you this and see if you can see. So fold back in a diagonal like so, hold that in there in place and then fold up. So you've got like a little triangle on the corner. Pin that in place and carry it on. Do that for each. I'll link a video in the description of a more of a tutorial on how to do these corners, just because it is a little tricky, and I found somebody who talks about it and shows it really well, so I'll put a video link to that below so you can follow that for yourself. And as you start getting to the place you started, I like to just trim off the rest so I've not got too much excess to play with. Just go to that there, push that to one side, and then you want to chop that down a bit more, and you want to be pushing that under there, under the original fold, so it creates a continuous fold. I'll just clip it and show you. Here is the fold of the original piece, and this has slipped under, kind of like a little tuck, and there you go. So you want to take that to your sewing machine, get that sewn in place, and then I'll show you the next step. As you can see, I've already gone round all the edges, pulled it to the other side and pinned it and clipped it in place, ready to top stitch. You can again sew this by hand, but I'm going to top stitch it just because I find it quicker and easier. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a loop. So the next part we're going to be making is then the final piece, which is the string for the back, because then you can tie that up and carry it around with you, which is really handy. And I'm going to be using leftover bias binding to do that. So there you go, all finished. As you can see, I've sewn around the edges, sewn the piece into the middle here, and then that should nicely fold and fold, ready to tie and carry it away. There you go, all done. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, I hope you found it helpful, and I hope you've managed to make your own adorable little armchair caddy. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment below and I will definitely be replying to you from there. If you have any further questions or you'd like to read a blog post with step-by-step pictures, I'll leave a link to it in the description to that as well. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!